By 2032, ACT will empower 20.2 million more learners to exit high school ready for post-secondary and work opportunities. We will concentrate our work around 5 strategic pillars: build, inform, connect, mobilize, and partner. We are collaborating with key stakeholders to bring this bold new vision to life. We've got our work cut out for us, and with your support moving forward, we will make it happen.
Hi friends, Angelica Vanetta, co-chair of Inclusive ICR. We are a coalition of over 220 employers in Eastern Iowa, all working together to grow the diversity and inclusion of our workforce, to create a space where employees feel a sense of belonging, included, and valued. Inclusive ICR is a proud sponsor of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion track of the Iowa Ideas Conference. As you participate today, be sure to connect with other Inclusive ICR champions, as we'd love to share information with you about our upcoming coalition meetings, projects, and how our work is impacting positive social change in our region. Be sure to visit our website at inclusiveiowa.org for information on upcoming events and to sign up for our e-newsletter. Thank you and have a great conference.
All right, good morning. It is still morning. We are happy to have all of you join our session. And just in case you don't remember what session you are joining, today's session is Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion track. Opportunities and challenges for students of color. In this presentation, we will be looking at the diversity of Iowa schools continues to increase, and finding teachers and support staff of color remains to be a challenge for school districts. We hope to look at districts, at how districts are trying to address that issue of teaching and educating staff while working to address how it serves students of colors and all around all day long. So with that said, I know you didn't come to hear from me, but my name is Angie Weekly. I work at Veridian Credit Union, and I have been happy to be part of the Iowa Ideas group for since the beginning of the time. So I am going to kick it off to our panelists with the first question. Just a side note, remember, if you have questions that you would like to have asked, that you want to make sure that you are putting them in the app, we'll be able to grab those, and we'll try to get all of those addressed within this session. And I say try because sometimes we do run out. But while we're waiting for some of your questions, ladies, could you please introduce yourself and give us a brief description of your history or work to make equitable change for students, particularly those that are BIPOC, which is Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Dr. Grover, would you like to go first?
Sure, why not? Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this important conversation. It always feels a little weird when I'm not standing in front of people, because certainly I do appreciate the engagement in the conversations. Just a little bit about myself. Dr. Tawana Grover, currently the superintendent of Cedar Rapids Community School District. I've been in education, I would say about maybe this is 28 years now. I am born and raised in Alabama, where I started my career. And I don't know, I guess back in 2003, I transitioned over to the Dallas-Fort Worth area in Texas. And prior to coming here, I spent 7 years in the state of Nebraska. I do believe that my journey has always been around some form of advocacy and leading on behalf of student populations that are overlooked and maybe not always at the forefront of certain opportunities and conversations. And that actually starts with me, myself, having to advocate for my own self as a first year a first generation college student, and understanding that sometimes just the awareness piece is missing for many students of color, and they just don't know what's available to them, just like I didn't know what my opportunities were. And so I started out my career with the aspirations of being a school counselor. I never made it to being a school counselor. Somehow I got tapped and they said, no, we need to get you into administration. And simply because when I graduated from high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And I wanted to make sure that that would never be the case for any other student. And that's the work now that I try to champion. I've championed this work in Alabama, Texas, Nebraska, and now here in Cedar Rapids. And so with that, I've always tried to think about who do our students become once they graduate, and what are those opportunities that are afforded to them. I spend a lot of my work around having a clear understanding of the graduate profile and what are actually going to be those game changers for life for our students. And a lot of that does come with having a solid education. Education continues to be the great equalizer, and making sure that students have a guaranteed opportunity for high quality instruction, that they're seen and that they're valued, that they're understood. I work with all different populations, and particularly students who may English may not be their first language, or students coming from challenging backgrounds. A lot of the supports, it definitely comes with understanding what's happening in and outside of school, what's their home life like. And I do believe that their basic necessities need to be taken care of, being healthy and well, and making sure that they're fed. But that's the basics. The other part of it is certainly is around education. I have a huge focus on college and career readiness pieces, because sometimes just the understanding of completing applications, or am I afforded the opportunity to be a part of an internship or job shadows. Sometimes, depending on which family you're in, those opportunities, they come very easily because people are connected. But for many of our to make equitable changes, we have to make sure that that information is shared broadly, and that people are also supported to be able to take full advantage of the opportunities. I am a big proponent of early childhood education. The research, it points to the fact that when a student is involved in early childhood education, they are more likely to graduate. They are more likely to go on to college. They have higher earnings when it comes to their finances and their career aspirations long into life. I'm also a big proponent of extracurricular activities when we're talking about equitable opportunities. It extends so far into the actual experiences that our students get. And so understanding the research and how it's all aligned to the work that we're doing within our school district is very critical to me. And I know we're going to talk more just about staffing and how that plays a role. But I guess the biggest way that I try to champion equitable change for students, number one, making sure that their basic necessities are taken care of. But my work does center around their education, because I know that that's going to be the true game changer when they graduate and leave our school district.
I'll go next. It's an honor to be here alongside Dr. Grover. My name's Barb Hansen, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. And my career has really been a winding road of learning and evolution. I worked at the building level initially, providing direct services as a paraeducator, where I really learned about behavior and seeing firsthand the harm of punitive responses and the benefit of restorative relationship building. Next, I was a family and student advocate in Omaha for those who were receiving services from the Housing Authority, where I learned so much about systemic harm experienced by students and how to
Well, looks like the weather is letting Miss Barb be frozen for us for right now. And so, Amy, if you can get Miss Sarah unmuted. Miss Sarah, If you could just give us a brief introduction of yourself and your work history, and your history to make equitable change for students, particularly those who identify as BIPOC.
Okay, my name is Sarah Swayze. I worked for the Cedar Rapids Community School District for approximately 28 years or so. I retired 3 years ago to open a program called Empowering Youths of Iowa, where I work with students who are at risk. A lot of things I am seeing and have seen in my employment with the district and now as a business owner is that a lot of our BIPOC kids are struggling, and there's a lack of support to understand what these kids are going through on their daily lives and how we can step up to support them in their education. As it stands right now, a lot of things are contributing to their high level of failure. Um, I know a lot of society want to put it on the district, but these are things that are outside of the district that are also impacting the lives of our students and their ability to focus on education. And as an African American woman, I know one of the things that our race tend to frown upon is mental illness. Well, I'm noticing that a lot of these kids are coming in here with high levels of anxiety or different traumas that they are dealing with that are not being addressed either in the home or at the school. And all these things are contributing to their failure, their high failure rate.
Awesome. So hopefully we'll get Barb back soon. But while we're waiting for her, both of you have mentioned some of the things that you think are challenges and ways that you think to overcome those challenges. One of the things that studies have shown is that representation matters, right? It has been proven that representation matters, that it fosters belonging, it increases confidence in ability, it accelerates academic achievement. So what are some strategies or suggestions you have on implementing to make sure BIPOC students can see that representation within their schools?
Well, one of the things I know that Cedar Rapids school districts are doing is they're trying to get more representation of African American teachers, minority teachers in the teaching field so that the kids can see individuals that look like them. The issue is we're in the state of Iowa. You know, that's just what it is. We're in the state of Iowa, and although they may come here, they may not stay here. And that has been the history for the almost 30 years I have been involved with the district, is that they come, but they don't stay. And one of the reasons is that they don't feel welcome, you know, and so that contributes a lot to what our students are seeing. So as for your question is, we need to get more representation, but the real question is, how do we go by doing that? And once we get that representation, how do we keep them? Another thing is we have to help our teachers understand, those who are not identified as BIPOC. We have to understand that there are different languages used and different races and different cultures. What one race may consider disrespectful is not necessarily being disrespectful. So we have to get them to understand those different cultural differences and not have these expectations of this is right in my world, so therefore it has to be right in your world.
Wow, thank you, Mrs. Swayze, for that information. Mrs. Swayze, excellent partner for us here in the Cedar Rapids Community School District, and I definitely think she is touching on, one of our areas for our newly adopted strategic plan. Our board has set forth a charge for us to really consider how we have representation showing up in our employees all across the district. There are some positions where, yes, we can see the diversity, but when it comes to our educators in the classrooms, our teachers, That's a huge challenge for us, as Mrs. Swayze described, and as well, even with our administrators. It's important to know that, who's in the seats, who's around the table, because the lived experiences, I think when we talk about representation, people really want to jump to, this reverse discrimination and things like that. But I think what we're calling out and what we're seeing with our students is the fact of the lived experiences, the ability to be able to relate and to be able to understand, and also to be able to impact and inspire. And it's something about that. If I recall, growing up and being taught by several of African American teachers, I think there was a huge motivator. Gosh, you all excuse us. We have these automatic lights. They call it saving energy. I call it nerve wracking. Okay. So as I was saying, I was afforded the opportunity to be taught by many teachers of color, and it just made it a difference. Number one, high expectations for learning was certainly there and incorporated within, along with the idea of the basic concepts of the content that was to be learned. It was just something about making the connections in a way that inspired you to want to do more. From a school district perspective, in regards to what are some of the strategies that we've tried that we're thinking about, working in conjunction with the community in which we live is also important when we're trying to recruit individuals. There are only so many people of color across the state. So that means that we have to think about some things differently in regards to recruiting. We are definitely in the planning stages here. Work that I've done in the past, it certainly has included different types of working with housing development to try to see how we can make it easier for people to navigate a new city. Because we're not just recruiting them to our school district, we're also recruiting them to our towns, right, to our cities, to our state, and that has to matter. Making sure that they are connected. One of the things I can appreciate about Cedar Rapids since I've been here, I would say I've been well supported by the community of color. Throughout, they're just always reaching out, making sure I understand where to be plugged in, making sure that they're standing with me in regards to the work that we have. I can't say that I've always experienced that or had that before. And so that is certainly a model that can be replicated in regards to, it makes such a difference to know that I can be connected with people from my background within my own community. I also believe that to grow your own programs. So as our school district is turning as well, right? So we have more students of color within our school district. So having a program that allows us to recruit students of color into the education profession early on, and really starting at the middle school levels, and making sure that we're valuing our profession. And so we're currently working on some grow your own programs so that we have students of color enrolled. They already live here. They know the area. So you're not trying to recruit them back to the area. They already have concepts of that. But when we talk to students, I will say we just had interesting conversations with our students, and you ask them if they plan on staying within their local community. The answer is no. And a lot of that is related back to what are they experiencing in their community right now that makes them feel like they can add value and that they want to stay and be a part of it. And so that's a lot of where our work has to be. I also think we have to be willing to work alongside our colleagues no matter what the race is, because you're not going to always have that. And at the end of the day, we want people that have high expectations for our students, that they value our students, they're able to connect with them. And one of the easiest way to do that is to be able to have conversations and build relationships with students and their families. We had a situation where we were going out into the neighborhoods here to engage with our folks, knocking on doors, talking about our bond referendum. And it was very interesting in having conversations with folks about doing community walks. and just sometimes where that fear is there and different perceptions. And my thought to that is, these are the community. This is the community where our kids are coming from every day into our schools, and so being able to understand, what's going on in their home life, seeing, where they live and valuing people and letting them know that they are important. It's only going to help us create that sense of belonging that we're trying to do as an organization. And so as we kind of think about representation in regards to who's in the classroom, but encouraging our students, and it doesn't always have to be classroom teachers. I guess the last thing I would say here, again, back to speaking of, I am very fortunate that I work alongside two other women of color as my Board of Education members. Like that is huge representation. We also have the president of our teachers union, African American female as well. And so when we have other and many community organizations that I could name as well, they are willing to come into our schools. So while we may not be at a point where we can recruit educators of color at this point, don't let that stop us from tapping into other, educated, involved, informed individuals of color who can also add value within our school system.
Well, welcome back, Ms. Barb.
I guess our whole block went without power for a couple minutes, so I apologize. The perks of technology. Would you like me to finish my introduction, or where are we at, Angie?
Yeah, well, we moved on to the next question, but we absolutely would love that. And Ms. Sarah, you had a question. Were you going to ask?
Yes, I wanted to address something that Dr. Grover said. One of the things I think that is also necessary, in which they are doing right now, is in order to better serve these students have to see something that's beyond the four walls in which they live. They lack exposure. So therefore, that lack of exposure causes them to lack knowledge in what they are able, in the direction that they are able to go in. So they lose hope. Many of our students come to us with that sense of learned helplessness because they feel like they have tried and tried and tried. So then they become self-defeating. They defeat themselves because they stop trying, because they automatically think that they're going to fail regardless. But another thing is, we have to become a community. It takes the whole community to raise these kids. And doing it individually doesn't work, or in isolation. We have to become partners in serving all students, not just our BIPOC students, but specifically that group. We have to reach out to the families, not judge the families, but make the families feel welcome, regardless of their life situation, to be a part of the solution that of the problem that we're trying to solve.
Which is an amazing transition to what Barb was saying when she was introducing herself, like what the work is that she wants to do in building communities together. And so we'll go back to having you continue to talk a little bit about what work you're bringing to the table. And if you want to talk a little bit about, we were talking about why representation matters and what you've done to make sure that that representation is there. You want to include that in your introduction. And then also, all of those who are participating or listening, we want to make sure that we're answering your questions. So remember that you have on the app, you can submit questions, and then I will bring those questions to the panelist here. So with that said, Ms. Barb, tell us a little bit, again, go back to telling us what you are doing, what your work has led you to bring in equitable change. And then if you can address a little bit, both Dr. Grover and Ms. Sarah have said comments about how community is also really, really important.
Absolutely. So I had just started out by saying I really started with some ground level work as a paraeducator, and then working as a family advocate. And throughout those experiences, I had the opportunity to really learn from the students and families and communities that I worked in, things that I never learned in my education or in a book. I was then able to apply those things and really strategically looking at how to improve outcomes in a more leadership role where I was working with TRIO as a student support services director, and then in Cedar Rapids where I served as a culture and climate transformation specialist. In the last year, I've left education after almost 20 years to do this work, to continue this work outside of the school system itself as a consultant in doing project management. My master's degree is in child, youth, and family studies, and I specialize in international family studies. But I want to really emphasize that critical to my journey has been my opportunity to learn from those with lived expertise and to really center that in the work that I do. I found oftentimes, especially in education, that a lot of the people making decisions and creating policy and practice look like me, but they're trying to address issues for people that are living very different experiences. So a lot of what I've done is creating opportunities to amplify voices and just really sit back and listen and learn. So when we think about representation, specifically, when I was in Ottumwa, we struggled to have representation because we were a very rural community and we didn't have the systems in place to support diverse staff. So we had to look outside the school system and how could we bring in leaders from the community that reflected our student population. And we created the first school-based human rights youth chapter to connect the students with leaders and other students across the state that looked like them so that they could have that representation and have that support to move initiatives along. I think those are just a couple things that come to mind, but definitely centering lived experience. Ms. Sarah talked about getting students in different spaces. We did student exchanges where we took students from our schools and took them to high performing schools. And the experience on both sides was really profound when they could see something different than what they knew. Or taking them on college campuses. I took the Gear Up students to over 40 campus visits in 3 years, and just getting them on different college campuses and seeing staff and seeing student leaders there that looked like them provides a different lens that they may not have within the school building.
Which is an interesting thing. You've mentioned TRIO, Dr. Grover. You've mentioned early childhood. And Ms. Sarah, you have really mentioned it takes the whole community. I mean, I think that's an overwhelming consensus that it in order for us to be successful, it's going to take the whole community. So with that said, what resources are available for BIPOC educators, students, parents that will aid in making sure that equity takes place in K-12? What resources are available? I know we mentioned before our call, we mentioned TRIO, and then Barb, you have mentioned it as well, and then talking about Gear Up, which I always think is a sister to the TRIO programs. What are some of the resources that me as a parent, as a community member could be aware of that I can connect students to?
Well, there's IJAG. IJAG gets students out there on job experiences and things like that, but also we underestimate what Goodwill has to offer us. Through my program, I have learned that Goodwill has a lot of valuable resources that will be great for not only the parents, but the students to get exposure to various low pay and internships, but they get the experience and the exposure to start thinking about their next step outside of high school. And in addition to that, I just talked with St. Luke's Hospital, who's going to be partnering with us to offer kids training in CNAs and patient care. But the students are not going to be doing internships. They're going to actually become hired employees of St. Luke's Hospital and receive that hands-on training. We have to utilize everything that's possible. I mean, she spoke about the college visits. That's one of the things we're doing with our students is getting them out on these college campuses, because I remember last year when we got a student on the college campus and she cried because she said she never saw herself as stepping foot on a college campus. You know, they can't dream about what they're not exposed to. And we have to expose them. The concept with education from when I grew up, we went on field trips, we went to different things. Now the majority of education is taking place inside the classroom, inside the building. We have to get the kids outside of the building to put some of that exposure in front of them, because otherwise they don't see it.
I think I'd like to take a different little angle to this question here in regards to what resources are available. I believe that there are a plethora of resources. I could probably just sit here and just name them down, and probably depending on which campus our students attend, there would be a list of it. As I mentioned earlier, there are a number of different community partners. I mean, the list is like this. I would encourage anyone, if they are wanting, specific names, whether it's mental health, college readiness, financial literacy, all of those different aspects. I would say that they exist in some form of fashion through many different organizations. But when I first arrived here, I had the opportunity to visit with some members of the Black Student Unions. We have those at each one of our high schools here. Just awesome kids. That really represent ideas and just gifts and talents, as well as challenges that they are facing. But one of the students, he shared with me, he said one of the biggest problems that he has faced as a student is this idea of hidden opportunities. He says sometimes he just doesn't even know what's available. Like certain kids are in certain programs, and it's just by chance is the way that he described it, that he happened to hear about a program just in passing. And I think when we talk about a resource, when we are considering our BIPOC population, it's really agency. I would encourage, I was over with a group of families over at Hoover Elementary, one of our diverse campuses, a couple of Sundays ago. And I was shocked and amazed and proud at the questions that they asked me. And it really was about how they get their students involved in higher education opportunities. They talked about, from their homeland in regards to, they knew when their kid was in the 6th grade or the 9th grade, that they knew what career path that they were going to be on. And all of their classes, they lined up to that. But they found it so difficult to navigate our system. This idea of agency, helping people to feel confident to ask questions, make it feeling confident to challenge the system in what they're seeing with their students. Somehow there's a fear around, if I have expectations for my students, how am I going to be perceived? How is this going to impact me? Am I going to be, threatened, isolated, or different like that? I just believe that's where the work is. There are a lot of opportunities out here, whether it's a technology barrier, whether it's a transportation barrier. We need to figure out how to build agency within our communities of color, so that they can actually access all the resources that are available to them. It just amazes me, even when it comes down to just talking to a family about the free internet that's available, right? A lot of people, they don't even know how to sign up for, how to take advantage of that. And so where they're paying, $50, $60, $100 for internet, and how that can, free up dollars to be able to give their students experiences like we talked about earlier. So knowledge is power. Agency is key. And that's where I see that is a huge area that is untapped for our communities.
And I would just add, in addition to what's already been said, is figuring out how to build a sense of community, whether it's through the formal programs and resources, which are abundantly available, as mentioned, or if it's more informally, where you're finding those school champions, whether it's a teacher, a paraeducator, someone within the school that is willing to support, if you're a parent, your child, or a student who they can connect with and feel has the ability to help them advocate for whatever the issue is at hand, and to have that opportunity to come together and know that the experiences they're having aren't in isolation.
Yeah, I think all of those are great great ways of trying to find those things, but are there specific programs? I know that you guys are all in the Cedar Rapids market, that you would point people to that would be, are there specific programs like, I guess, Miss Barb, your program, or Miss Sarah, your program? Can you tell us a little bit about what is it that your program is doing that might be a resource for parents, for students, for educators, and making sure that, of course, we want all students, but we know that we have to be intentional about making sure BIPOC students are included. So with that intentionality, what are some of the things that could that would be available or that we should look for, or how do we get that information? How do we find those hidden programs? How do we bring agency to the forefront of all students?
For my program, what we offer is a flexible schedule to these students based on what they need to learn of. Not only a flexible place, but a smaller environment where we can address their different learning issues, build that relationship with them. Because one of the things that is very noticeable about these kids is they don't have a lot of positive relationships going in their lives, or they lack um, they lack guidance, I would say. And so when they come here, we guide them one step at a time into how to make progress in their schoolwork. And therefore, when they see this progress being made, they slowly start rebuilding that confidence that they have lost. And in addition to that, we also work with the parents and we talk to them about, as I mentioned before, Goodwill coming in to help them get training in all the Microsoft programs like Excel and the spreadsheet and all these other things. We are beginning to start where students have to build a portfolio to see how successful they can be in going out to get a job once they either leave here. Uh, we have a lady that comes in that helps them get their driving permit because a lot of them lack the transportation to get to the driving place. They want a permit, they just can't get there. So not only do we address their academic needs, but we're addressing those other needs that come along with the child. I like to say that Empowering Youth is a place that we address the whole child, not just a part of the child. So we deal with those mental health issues, and I put them in contact with Mount Mercy College that has a program there that will help students that are dealing with mental health issues. And if their parents are, then I help them with that. Or I will direct them. My daughter directs them to, um, how am I saying this? Parents that have come in here and they're crying because they're getting evicted. We direct them to people that may be able to help them. We may not be able to get them to the right person right away, but we assist them. We have had parents come in here because they didn't have food, and we have offered to help them. Well, my daughter sits down with them and help them fill out the food stamp application. So it's those different things that we are offering to the families that we deal with alongside their educational piece. And they know that the one focus for us is that educational piece, that we require that they get that educational piece. Focus on that, because without that education, they're pretty limited. Yeah.
I would add that there's so many different moving parts, and really when we look at the collective impact of all the different work that's happening within the school, within the community, there is a lot of resources. So how do we empower students and families to connect those, like Angie is saying? And I think a lot of it is coaching and helping them understand that they need to advocate for themselves, whether it's going to the counselor as a parent or a student and asking about those opportunities. I have had students that have served with the Department of Human Rights on a youth action squad. Those are opportunities that are available if you're not finding them at your school, that you start looking at the state level. If you have younger children, well, actually, I think it's 3 through 12. The programs like the Academy do a phenomenal job of providing those supports. And there's so many. Tanger has services and programs, but I think it goes back for me where the sense of community is so important, so that you can have those connections, have that network to find out about all those different things that exist, and then be empowered to advocate for yourself, to be a part of those or to learn about it. I also have found for parents specifically, there's a lot of pain and hurt and anger that comes with some of the experiences that their children are having, and sometimes even a sense of not having any power to be able to support them or to address what they're seeing as causing harm. So for those parents, I also echo, like, finding that school-based champion that can really kind of bring together a group of parents so that you can not only collaborate and support one another, but there's power in numbers. If you come collectively as a group and express your concerns or provide interventions or ideas, you're more likely to be heard. Lastly, pertaining to my organization specifically, we focus much more on addressing the systemic pieces from a lens of intercultural development. We work with people to really look at what are ways that we can be intentional about doing this work, because for white folks especially, so much of it is looking internally and looking at what have I experienced in my life, and what are the pieces of my culture that contribute to how I view and interact and engage and judge others, which leads to a lot of bias. So it's a lot of that internal work that we do, more on that side of things, I guess, versus direct services for students and families.
And Angela, one of the things I would say, I'll just try to make it easy. Like I say, it can be overwhelming to even understand how to access different services. Of course, if it's related to the school district, I would always encourage our families to reach out to their school counselors. Many of them, they have family liaisons, and they can help them to be connected to different services. If you're out in the community, an easy one to start with is the United Way. The reason why I say that, they usually support so many other different programs that are out there that are available. And so even if they don't have the service, they're usually supporting different organizations. We also have our school foundation. They can also get you connected and also get resources a lot of times available to families. And I would encourage folks, and this may make it easier, to take full advantage of organizations like the NAACP. They are, that's a widely known branding. And again, if they don't have the services, they probably are connected or can get you connected. And so sometimes, and I know many organizations, they've tried to create these stop type of shops or whatever, because just getting around the city, you can throw names out like this, but even getting around parts of the city can be hard to navigate for some families. So recognizable names and organizations that may also be plugged into other entities may be an easy entry point for many of our families.
I think that those are all great points and how we can connect. I see many of the people that are on this call are great, that are a part of this are great connections. You mentioned the United Way. We mentioned, the city, lots of different places. But let's just switch a little bit and think about and talk about, what do we see as the greatest challenges BIPOC students face in K through 12? And then when you give your response, also let's talk about some of the things that you think would help address those needs. So what are the biggest so because we don't have a lot of time, so let's just think about one of the greatest challenges, just one of the greatest challenges you see that might face BIPOC students K through 12.
a sense of belonging. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel like they're welcome. They don't feel like they're understood. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that these kids are facing right now. Once they walk in those buildings, they have to feel like they are welcome there, that they're not viewed as immediately not caring about education. So that sense of belonging we need to really have in place.
Well, I'll give you 3 words, and that's connected, seen, and understood, and challenged. That make it 4. Connected, seen, understood, and challenged.
Yeah.
And how can we, as educators, how can we address those needs? What needs to take place for those needs to be addressed?
You said we only had a few minutes.
Give me the highlight. Give me the highlight. What has to take place in our schools? And I know that we're coming from the Cedar Rapids School District because that's where most of you have come from, but I think this can translate to any school district where you have majority BIPOC presence within those districts. And we're seeing that happen across our state, right? We're seeing that in our larger cities, it's happened. Des Moines has said that for bazillions of years. I know Waterloo Community Schools, that is the case. I mean, so it's throughout. So if the majority of our students don't feel welcome, connected, seen, heard, and challenged, that's a challenge for us as the adults. What are some things that we can do or you have seen as being successful?
I think
Go ahead.
in their approach towards students, if we don't change the microaggression, then we end up sending the wrong message to those BIPOC students. And whether it's intentional or not, that student is picking up on it and that affects their learning, that affects their ability to perform in the school.
I would agree with Sarah. If I had to pick one single thing, it would be the very punitive and exclusionary practices that we see for discipline that impact our Black students so disproportionately. And I think, like Sarah said, it's mindset work, but it's also policy and practice that we have to really address. And like Dr. Grover said, we have a few minutes. Like there's so much to this that we cannot put it into a couple minutes response. But I think really looking at how can we support and provide the tools and resources necessary so that our staff that are working with students understand their biases and can really become informed to be more culturally proficient and not feed into these narratives. I mean, even just research shows that when we're working with Black students, we tend to perceive them 3 years older than they are. And so developmentally, they may be responding completely appropriately, but because of our biases, we're holding them to expectations that aren't even realistic. And then we're punishing them for it. And then the behaviors get worse and we get on this violent cycle that's hard to break. So I think just looking at how do we help with the education piece to bridge some of those gaps of what people don't know.
Yeah, I would say it starts with community and district leadership. It has to be an expectation that our students will be, connected, seen, and understood. I think that expectation has to be cultivated within the culture. That's out of the gate. And then the other part of it is our, adults, they need support and training and understanding. Many people, they have their hearts are in the right places. But again, the experiences may be different. And so until we really truly invest in leaders in a lot of ways, but within that grace, allowing for education and some critical conversations in safe spaces. I feel like that's a lot that we heard when we were conducting focus groups with our folks. And we have to know that no matter the color of our skin, no matter the background, that is still our responsibility and that we can still contribute in a positive way with our students and in helping people to understand that it's okay. And so just how we approach it's okay in the sense of where you're starting from, we just can't stay there, right? Because we have to move to a different space and understand what it will require from us as adults. So if you just want to get down to it, it really is the adults. We're responsible for creating whatever culture, inside and outside. And so how we are training our employees, just even how you're treated. Sometimes I go to a store and I'd be like, if you knew who I was, really, would you really be, behaving in this manner, right? Or just simple things like that of how you are being treated, right? Just based on just ignorance in a lot of ways. And so I think the same thing holds true from the first person they meet, from the secretary that's, out front, from a crossing guard, all of that, and how we engage with our families. And so I do think that, assuming positive intent, there are a lot of people that want to do great work. But there are just a lot of gaps in understanding, even in not thinking that people of color are the only experts in this space. Like, I'm not going to be the expert on all things, people of color. So it really does take all of us coming together. But I think if we have that as an expectation from leadership, though, if you live in this community, this is who we are. This is how we behave. We are inclusive. We celebrate diversity. We want to make sure that people are valued, that they're treated well. And so that's just how we have to lead and expect people to carry out their responsibilities as adults, because at this juncture, our students' lives, they are at stake, right? And we have to get it right in order for them to be able to operate in their best selves each and every day.
And I was like, and click, because I'm getting off the box. We did have a couple questions come in for the panelists. Knowing that it does start with the adults, one of the participants says, I'm interested in knowing how the school leaders are navigating current legislative and maintaining the support for our students of color. In what ways has it limited or expanded your efforts? Now, we have a short time, but so we don't want to make this all about politics, but at the same time, in what ways has it limited or expanded your efforts, the current legislative legislation that has impacted schools? So if I think about school choice, I think about things that haven't made it through but are on there, like when you talk about educating people around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and even just using those terms. Those are two of the things that come to mind when I think of legislation around education.
Yes. So navigating, I guess that's one way to look at it. At the end of the day, we have to take care of our kids that are in our school system. And so whether or not, people want us to use one word over another word, at the end of the day, we're doing right by kids. We're giving them what they need. And we know part of what they need is understanding them. We know part of what they need is if they need additional resources or supports. And that's basically all equity is giving a student what they need when they need it in order to be successful. So however we want to talk about it, the work is still the same. And so I think, and we have to know that we're always jumping over hurdles and barriers. There's always going to be a new challenge that's going to stand in the way. But if we can continue to figure that out as an organization, I believe that we're continuing to work towards it. I also believe that, again, it's back to the training and expectation. If you're going to work here, you're going to be a part of this. This is what we're going to do. This is what's needed in order for our students to be successful. So I would say understand the legislation. We do have to understand the law. But we can also be out challenging the law too. At the same time, we're working alongside it and understanding what we can do and how to do it with the same end result in mind.
Anything you ladies want to add?
No, I don't.
So we have one last question, but I also have, we have another question from our participants. And I'm gonna put it into our ending question, and I'll have each of you answer this. Okay. So we have 7 minutes left. So just so when you respond, we have 7 minutes left. What suggestion, piece of advice, or nugget do you have for educators, parents, students as they advocate for equity in K through 12? And on top of that, how would you guide local organizations who want to open doors for BIPOC students that they want to, how do they connect? If they want to do tours, if they want to do job channels, internships, what are some of the best practices you know of? So 2 questions, advice, nugget, suggestion as we leave out at the door, but also how do people connect? Who would be their connection? What is the best practice to get connected if they have opportunities for BIPOC students? If you need clarification, I tend to be wordy, so let me please ask.
I think one of the things they could do is, the first step would be to contact the Cedar Rapids Community School District. Because I think once we start building that database of businesses that are available to become a part of this community view, that makes it easier for the district to serve those kids versus trying to go in isolation to different businesses. Let's work as a team, because I know, and not just because it's Dr. Grover, but I believe any superintendent would welcome the opportunity to work with communities that's wanting to serve kids in the best interest that they can. So I would simply say, call the district and get in contact with someone down there about what they want to offer and how they see that working.
I know this may seem so. Yes, Mrs. Swayze. I know this may seem so simple, but believe it or not, as superintendents or district administrators, like when we're having conversations how to best service our students, usually we know like 4 or 5 people like are the go-to groups or organizations all the time that kind of pop up, and you would think that we know all of the organizations and entities, but that's just simply not true. And especially for me being new here to the area too, definitely sometimes I'm shocked that I can name a few more than some other people. So I would say the easiest way to do it is if you're thinking about working with Cedar Rapids Community School District, a business or organization, and you want to understand how to get connected with us, I would say our contact person is Adam Zimmerman. You can call up here. You can look him up on the website, or you can contact me directly. Send me an email if I'm easier to reach, and I'll make sure that it get forward over. There's always a process for everything, but I will tell you, we're always looking for people at certain times, and we do want to get our families connected. We're right now getting ready to expand our footprint around our graduate profile. One huge component of that would be involved with our community and making sure 100% of our students have access to job shadows, internships, and apprenticeships. And so we have more than 15,000 kids. We're going to be looking for a lot of folks. So I would encourage you to get connected with us in that way. And again, just kind of as we're thinking about what piece of advice of when we think about our students of color, I would just encourage us to have conversations. We learn so much when we just are out building relationships and just talking to students. Sometimes as adults, we think we know. Times are changing. There are all different sorts of challenges out there. And the more our students can trust us, the more that they can inform us on how to best support them.
I would just add, for organizations or even individuals who want to get involved, Cedar Rapids or elsewhere, that use your connection. So there are staff that are really good at using family-centered practices, and you may already have a relationship with an engagement specialist or a counselor or someone in your building that you feel more comfortable connecting with initially, and then they can connect you with someone at the district level. Whatever that looks like, don't hesitate to connect with someone to get your foot inside the door. I seen a lot of times with agencies that I worked with, it came up through the building level or through a staff member that wasn't at the district office. So I think just getting that connection is so important. And as far as advice, I think I would just say that this really is a journey. There's no urgent or quick fix or it would have been done already. So for me, it's just really important to look at those who have done this work before us for wisdom and really to center lived experience and guiding us. And then just doing whatever is necessary to ensure our students all have a safe space to not only survive, but to really thrive.
I was going to say amen to all of your comments, but then I was like, wait, I ain't at church. But anyway, I want to say that time flew by quickly and we barely scratched the surface of opportunities and things that are available to our kids. I'm grateful to you ladies for taking the time out of your day to impart your wisdom. And if you have specific questions or you would like to reach out to any of the individuals, I believe our contact information is on the Whova app. So if you have additional questions or you want to reach out to any of us, that app is a good way to do that. And Dr. Grover said, go ahead, email her. I'm just playing Dr. Grover.
You can.
Go ahead and email her. But we would, we welcome the conversation to continue because it does, I think you heard all of these ladies say it takes the whole community in order for us to achieve what we need to do. And it needs to start early, like Dr. Grover said. Studies show that we need to start earlier than we think. 3-4 years old is when we need to start getting kids educated. So with that said, go enjoy your lunch on you. Have a great rest of your day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.